Dear audience friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's get started.
During my sleep, an intrusion occurred in my room. This incident took place during a period of my life that I would like to share. My name is Victoria, and I am a 19-year-old who experienced a life-altering story of infidelity. To provide some context, my life was relatively ordinary, and I had been in a relationship with my boyfriend, Matt, for nearly 2 years. We were a typical couple, and Matt was an ideal partner who always made me feel special through his attentiveness and affection. However, everything changed when Matt introduced me to his father, Andrés, during a family gathering. Initially, Andrés appeared to be a respectable man with a friendly smile and a good sense of humor. However, from the moment we met, I sensed something uncomfortable in his gaze. It felt as if he was evaluating me inappropriately, looking beyond the surface. At first, I dismissed these feelings, thinking I might be overreacting or misinterpreting his intentions. But as time went on, the persistent discomfort remained. I started noticing Andrés finding excuses to be near me, whether it was at family gatherings or when we visited his house. Our conversations began to feel more personal than they should have, and his compliments became increasingly suggestive. This left me confused and concerned about why my boyfriend's father was behaving this way. As a 19-year-old, I struggled to navigate this uncomfortable situation without causing problems in my relationship with Matt. I felt unsure about what to do next. Unfortunately, the situation with Andrés only worsened over time. His compliments, though subtle, became more frequent, and he always found a reason to praise me, whether it was my appearance, personality, or intelligence. It seemed as though he was attempting to seduce me, but no one else seemed to notice. Despite my deep love for Matt, I couldn't ignore the discomfort and fear caused by Andrés' inappropriate attention. Whenever we visited Matt's house, the tension in the air became palpable. Andrés continued to stare at me, and his insinuations became more blatant. He would whisper compliments in my ear when no one else could hear, and his hands occasionally brushed against mine in a suggestive manner. It felt as if he was testing my boundaries, pushing to see how far he could go before I resisted. I felt trapped in this dangerous game, unsure of how to confront the situation without causing a scandal within the family or damaging my relationship with Matt. I was torn between confronting Andrés directly and telling him that his behavior was unacceptable, or hiding the situation and hoping it would resolve itself. Both options seemed daunting, and I feared the potential consequences of either choice. The internal struggle became exhausting, and I felt increasingly isolated without knowing who to turn to for advice. My anxiety and confusion began to affect my relationship with Matt, which used to be my refuge. Each day became a constant dilemma, torn between my love for Matt and the inappropriate attention I received from his father. I found myself caught in the middle of this dangerous game, desperately searching for a way out. Despite feeling uncomfortable, I must admit that Andrés' excessive attention made me feel special. Initially, I convinced myself that it was all in my head, that I was overreacting. However, as time went on, those moments of complicity between us became harder to ignore. There were instances when our gazes met during family dinners, and I felt a shiver down my spine. Although there was nothing explicit in those looks, there was an undeniable connection that made my heart race. I realized that I had started to enjoy Andrés' attention, even though I felt guilty about it. There was something addictive about feeling desired and attractive, even though I knew it was wrong. Despite this internal conflict, the game continued, and I remained trapped in confusion. I worried that someone else in the family might notice the tension between Andrés and me, but as far as I knew, we were the only ones aware of this uncomfortable secret. The main challenge was hiding this situation from Matt. I knew I couldn't keep him in the dark forever, but I was afraid that revealing the truth would irreparably damage our relationship. I felt trapped, and with each passing day, the tension became more unbearable. Every encounter with Andrés became a test, and I tried to maintain my distance to avoid being alone with him. However, it was sometimes unavoidable. I found myself torn between two worlds, the affection and attention Andrés gave me, which my ego craved, and my love for Matt, with whom I had shared a deep connection for years. This internal battle between desire and what I knew was right consumed me. Eventually, the situation reached a breaking point when Matt unexpectedly suggested that we all go on a family trip together. The idea terrified me, as it meant spending extended time in close proximity to Andrés, with the potential for being alone with him. However, I couldn't refuse without raising suspicions. Reluctantly, I accepted the invitation, fearing what might transpire during that trip. I knew I had to find a way to end this dangerous game before it spiraled out of control. The tension and fear had become unbearable, and I couldn't allow my relationship with Matt and my own integrity to be further affected. My emotions were in constant turmoil, and I couldn't help but wonder if this situation was orchestrated by fate or if I had contributed to this dilemma myself. I realized that I had to make a decision soon, before the game reached its inevitable and destructive conclusion. Little did I know how complicated things would become when the truth finally came to light. The day of the trip to a cabin in the middle of the forest arrived, and my nerves were on edge as I prepared for the journey. Worries and unanswered questions filled my mind. How would I handle Andrés in such an intimate setting? Could I maintain my distance and prevent things from escalating? Despite my anxiety, I tried to behave as normally as possible during the journey and settled into the cabin upon arrival. Andrés made sure his room was located next to ours, which only heightened my unease. I knew I had to be cautious, as any misstep could lead to disaster. Throughout the day, I kept myself busy with chores and family activities, attempting to distract myself from the tension. However, whenever I found myself alone with Andrés, the atmosphere became charged with an undeniable tension. His looks and gestures grew increasingly suggestive, and I struggled to maintain my distance. In the evening, we gathered around a campfire, surrounded by the darkness of the forest. While sharing stories and laughter, I tried to relax and enjoy the moment, but I couldn't let my guard down. It was during this time that I noticed Andrés sitting close to me, deliberately brushing his legs against mine. Our gazes met several times, and the tension in the air became unbearable. My heart raced, and I experienced a mixture of fear and excitement that only added to my confusion. When it was time to sleep, I felt emotionally drained. I retreated to my room, attempting to process the events of the day. I knew that this situation couldn't continue, and I had to find a way to put an end to it before it was too late. Lying on the bed, staring at the dark ceiling, my mind raced, searching for a solution that would confront this situation without destroying my relationship with Matt. However, I couldn't find a clear answer, and the complexity of the dilemma overwhelmed me. I felt trapped in this dangerous game, unsure of how to escape. As I contemplated my options, I realized that time was running out. The next chapter of this story would be crucial, and I questioned whether I would find a way out before everything fell apart. The cabin in the middle of the forest seemed to have an eerie atmosphere, as if nature itself was observing our dangerous game. After that tense night around the campfire, I hoped that things would calm down, but the tension persisted. The following day, I decided to wake up early and take a shower to clear my mind. The cabin had a small bathroom with an old, somewhat see-through curtain. Thinking I was alone, I entered the shower, but to my surprise, the curtain suddenly moved, revealing Andrés standing there, shamelessly staring at me. It was a moment of absolute shock, and our eyes locked. Although he feigned surprise, I knew it hadn't been an accident. His eyes roamed over my naked body, and I felt a rush of heat and embarrassment. I quickly covered myself and demanded that he leave the room. Eventually, he complied, offering a hurried apology that sounded more like an excuse. I stayed under the shower for a long time, feeling a mix of anger, confusion, and something else I didn't want to admit. Afterward, I dressed and sat on the bed, trying to gather my thoughts. I knew I had to face the consequences of what had happened and make difficult decisions. I couldn't continue to allow this situation, but I also couldn't ignore the fact that I had felt something for my father-in-law. Time passed as I grappled with my emotions and moral dilemmas. When my boyfriend, his sister, and my mother-in-law returned, I pretended as if nothing had happened, burying the secret deep within me. The internal struggle intensified, but I chose to continue as if nothing had occurred, wanting to protect my boyfriend and father-in-law from the truth. However, the tension persisted, affecting my relationship with my boyfriend. We struggled to connect as we once had, and our arguments became more frequent. It became evident that our relationship was falling apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. I acknowledged my mistake and learned a valuable lesson about the consequences of giving in to temptation. Eventually, my boyfriend and I decided to part ways, realizing that it was best for both of us. I understood that infidelity only leads to pain and regret, and I promised myself that I would never allow something like that to happen again. I had to focus on healing and finding a way to overcome this crisis. Gradually, I distanced myself from Andrés, avoiding situations where we would be alone and maintaining a neutral attitude in his presence. However, the tension remained, and my boyfriend noticed the change in my behavior, prompting him to ask questions. I evaded his inquiries, not wanting to hurt him further by revealing the truth. As time went on, our relationship continued to deteriorate, and I struggled with my emotions and guilt. I knew I had made a terrible mistake, but I also had to learn from it. The story of my affair with my father-in-law served as a constant reminder of the consequences of wrong choices and the importance of remaining faithful.